Welcome to a quiet corner of the ancient past. Take a moment to settle into your space, allowing the weight of the day to drift away like sand caught in a gentle breeze. Tonight, we are leaving the modern world behind to walk through the warm, moonlit streets of ancient Egypt. We are here to discover the quiet, ingenious ways a civilization mastered the art of rest in one of the hottest environments on Earth. As you listen, let the rhythm of the story soothe you, moving as slowly as the Nile itself. You are safe, you are comfortable, and the desert night is ready to share its secrets with you. Chapter 1: The Heat That Remains After Sunset. You stand at the edge of a narrow street as the final bruised purple of twilight fades into a deep indigo night. The sun has long since dipped behind the western cliffs, but the air still holds a heavy, insistent warmth that brushes against your skin like a thick linen shroud. You feel the fine, powdery dust of the road beneath your sandals, still holding the day's fire. Ahead, the settlement of mudbrick homes stretches out in the moonlight, a maze of silver-gray shapes and soft shadows. Every surface around you seems to be exhaling the sun's energy, creating a world that vibrates with a low, silent heat. You reach out and rest your palm against a thick mud-brick wall of a nearby house. The surface is rough and earthy, textured with bits of straw and dried river silt that feel warm to your touch. It is a mainstream historical fact that mudbrick was the soul of Egyptian architecture, prized for its ability to act as a thermal sponge. During the long, blistering hours of the day, these walls absorbed the sun's fury, keeping the interior rooms in a state of dim, protective shadow. Now, in the late hour, the wall is slowly giving that heat back to the night air, a rhythmic breathing of stone and clay. A few steps away, you notice a woman standing in a low doorway, her silhouette outlined by the soft, amber glow of a small oil lamp inside. She reaches up with a slow, deliberate movement to adjust a wooden shutter over a narrow window. The wood is dark and weathered, clicking softly against the mudbrick as she pulls it into place to guide the evening breeze. She isn't trying to seal the house, but rather to coax the shifting currents of the night into the heart of her home. You watch the fluid grace of her gesture, a nightly ritual of survival that has been repeated for thousands of years. As you continue walking, the street narrows, pulling the warm walls closer to your shoulders. The air here is trapped, a pocket of stillness that smells of dry earth, and the faint, sweet aroma of burning acacia wood from a distant cooking fire. You notice how the houses lean toward one another, their upper stories casting long, protective shadows over the path. This density was no accident. By crowding the buildings together, the ancient planners ensured that the streets remained shaded for as long as possible. Even now, in the dark, the architecture feels like a collaborative effort to guard the inhabitants from the relentless desert sun. You turn a corner and the horizon opens up, revealing the Nile shimmering in the distance like a ribbon of hammered silver. A faint, cooler current of air suddenly finds you, drifting up from the riverbanks and carrying the scent of wet reeds and damp silt. It is a refreshing contrast to the heavy warmth of the alleys, a reminder that the river is the true lungs of this land. You see a group of fishermen securing their wooden boats for the night, their voices low and melodic as they murmur to one another. The river moves with a quiet, powerful pulse, its surface catching the light of a vast, unclouded moon. Near a small courtyard, you observe a family beginning their preparations for the night's rest. A young man is spreading a large reed mat across the packed earth, his movements rhythmic and calm. Over the mat, he lays a sheet of bleached linen, the fabric appearing almost white in the moon's glow. You step closer and touch the edge of the cloth, feeling its crisp, cool texture against your fingertips. Linen was the primary shield against the heat, a breathable gift from the flax fields that allowed the body to stay cool even when the air refused to move. The fabric is light, airy, and remarkably soft. While you watch the family, you reflect on a gentle scholarly uncertainty that often occupies the minds of historians. Some researchers suggest that the primary cooling strategy of these homes was the sheer thickness of the mudbrick walls, which provided a massive thermal barrier. Others argue that the intentional placement of windows and doors to create cross-ventilation was the more critical factor in making sleep possible. Perhaps the truth lived somewhere in the middle, a perfect marriage of heavy material and clever design. Regardless of the debate, you can feel the practical intelligence of the space as the family settles into their moonlit sanctuary. In the corner of the courtyard, tucked beneath a narrow window, stands a large, porous clay jar filled with river water. You notice how the outside of the jar is dark and damp, sweeting in the warm night air. As the water seeps through the clay and evaporates, it creates a small, localized zone of coolness that chills the breeze as it enters the room. You place your hand near the vessel and feel a faint, refreshing draft, a simple but brilliant use of physics to create an ancient form of air conditioning. The jar sits like a silent sentry, breathing a quiet, liquid chill into the heavy night. A quirky historical detail comes to mind as you watch a mother help her child wash before bed. Some Egyptians were known to use a mixture of water and natron, a natural salt, to cleanse their skin before sleep, believing it helped to draw the heat away from the body more effectively. You see the child dipping his hands into a shallow ceramic basin, rubbing the water over his forearms and the back of his neck. The dampness on his skin catches the moonlight, glowing briefly before the dry air pulls the moisture away. It is a small, intimate routine, a gesture of care designed to invite a few hours of precious rest. The sounds of the settlement are beginning to fade into a textured, nighttime hum. You hear the distant, rhythmic croak of frogs from the river reeds and the soft, dry rustle of a palm tree swaying in the distance. Somewhere nearby, a donkey brays once, a loud and echoing sound that quickly settles back into the silence. The world is slowing down, surrendering to the temperature rather than fighting against it. You feel your own pace slowing in response, your breath becoming deeper and more rhythmic as the night takes a firmer hold on the landscape. The stars above are brilliant, sharp points of light in a sky that feels infinitely wide. You find a low stone bench near the edge of the street and sit for a moment, letting your shoulders drop. The heat is still there, a constant companion, but it is no longer the aggressive force it was during the day. It has become a soft, ambient presence that you can move through. You look up at the rooftops, where many people have already moved their mats, their dark shapes reclining against the silver sky. This was the ultimate solution to the heat. Rising above the walls to meet the wind, you feel a sense of shared peace with these silent sleepers, a community united by the search for coolness. The first hour of our journey through the Egyptian night is coming to an end. We have felt the warmth of the walls, tasted the river breeze, and watched the first preparations for sleep. But the house itself still has more to reveal about how it protects its inhabitants from the sun's lingering memory. As the moon climbs higher, we will move from the open street into the heart of the home, exploring the thick-walled rooms that act as a refuge for the weary. Stay in this state of calm as we prepare to step through the next doorway. You leave the stone bench behind and walk toward a modest doorway, its frame made of dark, heavy sycamore wood. As you cross the threshold, The air changes immediately. The weight of the desert night stays at the door, replaced by a stillness that feels thick and grounded. Inside, the home is a sanctuary of shadow, cooled by walls that have spent the day fighting the sun. You move through the front room, your feet finding the cool, packed earth floor. The space is narrow but feels protective, like being inside a cool clay jar that has been buried in the sand. Every corner of the house seems to hum with a quiet, ancient density. You reach out and press your hand against the interior mudbrick wall, tracing the faint, swirling patterns left by the fingers of the builder. The surface is surprisingly smooth, finished with a fine layer of pale plaster that feels cool against your palm. You notice how the thickness of the wall seems to swallow the sound of the street outside, leaving only the rhythm of your own breath. These walls are over a foot thick, a massive barrier of earth that keeps the indoor temperature nearly 20 degrees lower than the world beyond. You let your hand linger on the cool plaster, marveling at how dirt and straw can create such a sophisticated shield. In the center of the room, a small oil lamp rests on a low mudbrick pedestal, its tiny flame flickering in a current of air you cannot yet feel. The light casts long, amber shadows that dance across the ceiling, illuminating the heavy palm beams that support the roof. The scent of the lamp, a mixture of burning flax oil and a hint of charred wick, is thin and familiar. You watch the smoke curl upward, disappearing into the dark recesses of the ceiling. The dim light makes the room feel larger than it is, a place where the boundaries of the walls seem to dissolve into the velvet shadows of the night. You look up and notice a series of narrow slits high on the wall, just beneath the ceiling. These are the windows, designed specifically to let the hot air escape while keeping the interior in a state of permanent, cooling gloom. You see a faint shimmer of moonlight through the openings, highlighting the dust motes that drift lazily in the draft. These small vents are the lungs of the house, constantly pulling the warmer air upward and out, allowing the cooler, heavier air to settle near the floor where you stand. You feel a tiny, refreshing trickle of windbrush against your forehead, a gift from the night sky above. It is a mainstream historical fact that the composition of mudbrick was perfectly suited for the Egyptian climate. By mixing the nitrogen-rich silt of the Nile with chopped straw and allowing the blocks to bake slowly in the sun, the Egyptians created a building material with incredible thermal mass. During the day, the straw inside the bricks acted as a thousands-fold insulator, slowing the movement of heat toward the interior. By the time the sun set, the heat had only just reached the middle of the block, where it would begin to radiate back outward into the cooling night. You are standing inside a living machine, a structure that manages energy with effortless, silent grace. Your gaze travels to the ceiling, where thick, rounded palm logs stretch from one wall to the other. They are dark with age, their bark long since stripped away to reveal a rugged, fibrous texture. Between the logs, layers of woven reed mats and packed clay create a dense canopy that prevents the heat of the roof from pressing down into the living space. You notice how the beams are laid in a rhythmic, repeating pattern that gives the room a sense of sturdy, grounded order. There is a faint smell of dried wood and earth hanging in the air, a scent that speaks of a home built from the very land it stands upon. In a recessed niche near the floor, a cluster of pottery jars sits in the shadows, their surfaces dark with moisture. These are the water stores, and you notice how a thin layer of dampness has collected on the outside of the porous clay. As the night air moves across the jars, it triggers a slow evaporation that pulls heat away from the water inside and the air surrounding them. You kneel and touch the rim of a jar, finding the clay to be bone-chillingly cool compared to the warmth of the room. It is a humble piece of technology, yet it provides a constant, refreshing reservoir of life for the family. A gentle scholarly uncertainty exists regarding the exact orientation of these homes. While some researchers suggest that houses were strictly angled to catch the prevailing north wind, others argue that the dense packing of the neighborhood made such precise alignment impossible. You look at the way the doorway and the high vents are positioned, creating a straight path for the air to travel. Whether by a master architect's plan or through centuries of local wisdom, the house seems to know exactly how to breathe. You move through the current of air, feeling how it flows like an invisible stream through the heart of the mudbrick rooms. The layout of the home is intentionally open, with wide doorways that have no heavy doors to block the movement of the air. You walk from the front room into a small central hall, noticing how the spaces transition seamlessly from one to the next. There are no cluttered hallways or tight corners to trap the heat. Instead, the house is a series of interconnected chambers that allow the night breeze to wander freely. You see a low wooden stool tucked against a wall and a stack of woven baskets in the corner. Everything arranged to keep the center of the room clear. The simplicity of the space feels intentional and incredibly restful. A small, quirky detail of Egyptian life involved the practice of sprinkling water directly onto the mud floors just before the family retired for the night. You notice a few damp patches on the ground near the sleeping area, where the earth has turned a deep, rich brown. As this water evaporates into the dry air, it creates a subtle, cooling mist that hangs just a few inches above the floor. You step near one of these patches and feel a faint, cool sensation around your ankles. It is a quiet, domestic magic. A way to use the very floor beneath your feet to lower the temperature by a few precious degrees. Near the back of the hall, a cat is curled into a tight ball in the shadow of a large grain jar. It has found the coolest spot in the house, where the thick mudbrick meets the damp earth of the floor. You watch the slow, rhythmic rise and fall of its fur, its ears occasionally twitching at the sound of a distant cricket. Even the animals in this world have mastered the art of finding the pockets of coolness that the house provides. The cat remains perfectly still, a symbol of the deep, uncomplicated rest that the thick walls and the night air are working together to create for everyone inside. You move back toward the main doorway, looking up at the ladder that leads to the roof. The interior of the home has done its work, offering a dim, cool refuge from the lingering heat of the day. But the call of the open sky is growing stronger. The house is a fortress of clay and straw, a breathing structure that cradles the family in its heavy, protective arms. You take one last deep breath of the cool, earthy air of the hall before stepping toward the stairs. The night is moving forward, and the true sanctuary of the rooftop, with its wide winds and silver stars, is waiting for you. We leave the quiet shadows of the mudbrick rooms behind, carrying the scent of clay and the feeling of the cool walls with us. The transition from the dense, protective interior to the open air of the roof is a journey from the earth to the sky. Ahead, the stairs are narrow and steep, carved into the very side of the house. As you begin your climb, the air grows lighter and the sound of the river returns. The rooftop is the crown of the Egyptian home, a place of wind and light, where the heat finally yields to the beauty of the night. You place your hand on the side of the house and find the first step of the exterior staircase, a narrow flight of mudbrick built directly into the wall. The climb is steep, and as you ascend, You feel the heavy, stagnant air of the street begin to thin. With each step, the world below grows quieter, and a faint, silver-tinted breeze begins to pull at the hem of your linen tunic. Your sandals scuff softly against the grit of the stairs, a dry, rhythmic sound in the deepening night. By the time you reach the final step, you are standing above the rooftops of your neighbors, looking out over a landscape of flat, moonlit squares. The surface of the roof is firm and surprisingly smooth, finished with a layer of fine clay and lime plaster that has spent the evening releasing its stored heat into the open sky. Unlike the interior of the house, which holds its temperature with a heavy patience, the rooftop is an arena of rapid cooling. You walk to the center, feeling the slight grittiness of the plaster beneath your feet and the immense openness of the desert sky above. The moonlight is so bright here that you can see the grain of the wood in the roof beams poking through the edges. It is a space of silver light and boundless, moving air. Nearby, you watch a family begin the nightly ritual of unrolling their reed mats across the roof. The sound of the dry reeds sliding against the clay is a soft, rhythmic rustle, like the sound of a distant river. A young boy pulls a mat into a corner, carefully aligning it with the direction of the Nile breeze. You notice how they handle the mats with a practiced ease, smoothing out the woven fibers until the surface is flat and inviting. For millions of people across the Black Land, this simple act is the true beginning of rest, a departure from the stone-heavy day into the light, airy freedom of the night. It is a mainstream historical fact that rooftops were the primary sleeping quarters for Egyptians during the summer months. Because the thick mudbrick walls of the lower rooms continued to radiate heat, long after the sun went down, the open roof provided the only escape. Up here, the heat of the day escapes upward into the vacuum of space, a process of nocturnal radiation that chills the surface of the roof faster than any enclosed room. You feel the truth of this as you stand still. The air around your ankles is noticeably cooler than the air you left in the street below. The roof is the planet's own cooling fin. You walk toward the edge of the roof, where a low mudbrick parapet provides a safe boundary. Leaning your elbows on the warm stone, you look down into the narrow alleyway. Below, the shadows are deep and motionless, holding the last of the day's oppressive heat like a heavy fog. But up here, the world is alive with the movement of the wind. You see the silhouettes of other families on neighboring roofs, their small oiled lamps twinkling like fallen stars across the settlement. There is a sense of quiet community in this shared elevation, a world of sleepers rising together to meet the cool, silver breath of the desert. A quirky historical detail of rooftop life involves the placement of shallow clay bowls filled with water around the sleeping area. You see a woman carefully topping off 3 such bowls near her children's mats, her movements slow and deliberate. As the dry desert wind moves across the surface of the water, it encourages rapid evaporation, which lowers the temperature of the air immediately surrounding the bowls. It is a localized, natural cooling system that creates small pockets of refreshment in the darkness. You place your hand near one of the bowls and feel a faint, sweet chill rising from the water, a tiny miracle of physics in the night. Some researchers suggest that even modest Egyptian homes may have utilized primitive wind catchers, or malkoffs, on their roofs to funnel the cooler, high-altitude air into the rooms below. However, there is a gentle scholarly uncertainty about how common these structures were among the ordinary working class. You look around and see only simple, flat surfaces. Yet you notice how the family has placed a tall, woven reed screen on the northern edge of the roof. It is angled to catch the prevailing wind, bending the breeze downward toward the sleeping mats. Whether a permanent architectural feature or a temporary woven tool, the intent to capture the wind is clearly visible everywhere. Near the center of the roof, a small bundle of dried mint and lotus petals is tied to a wooden post, swaying gently in the current. The scent is faint but remarkably clear, a refreshing, herbal aroma that cuts through the earthy smell of the mudbrick. As the wind moves through the bundle, it carries the fragrance across the sleeping mats, creating a sensory environment that signals the body to relax. You inhale deeply, feeling the cool mint settle in your lungs. It is a simple, domestic luxury, a way to use the natural movement of the night to scent the air and invite deep, undisturbed dreams. You turn your gaze toward the horizon, where the Nile flows in a wide, shimmering curve. From this height, you can see the dark line of the palm trees that fringe the riverbanks, their fronds moving in a slow, rhythmic dance. The breeze that reaches you now is stronger, carrying the damp, cool weight of the water. It feels like a physical touch against your skin, stripping away the last of the day's perspiration and leaving you feeling light and refreshed. The river is the great engine of the night, sending its cooling power across the sun-baked land to soothe the people who live along its edges. A young girl settles onto her mat, pulling a thin, bleached linen sheet up to her waist. Beside her, a small wooden doll carved with simple patterns rests on the reed weave. You watch as her mother leans over to whisper a short prayer for protection, her hand resting briefly on the child's forehead. The girl's eyes are fixed on the stars above, her breathing slowing as the cool air and the quiet routine of the roof take effect. There is no furniture here to clutter the space. There is only the mat, the sheet, and the infinite sky. It is a minimalist, perfect comfort that requires nothing but the night. You look up at the stars, which appear larger and more brilliant than you have ever seen them. Without the glow of modern lights, the Milky Way is a thick, glowing river of silver dust that mirrors the Nile below. You feel the vastness of the desert sky pressing down on you, a silent, glittering canopy that has watched over these rooftops for thousands of years. The stars provide a sense of timeless companionship, a steady light that guides the way into sleep. You feel a profound sense of peace, a quiet realization that the heat is a small price to pay for a night spent in the arms of the universe. The mats are full now, and the small oil lamps are being extinguished one by one, leaving the rooftops in a state of silver, moonlit grace. The family is quiet, their movements reduced to the occasional rustle of linen or the soft sound of a deep, contented sigh. You stand at the center of the roof, a silent visitor in this world of sleepers, feeling the cool wind move around you like a gentle tide. The rooftop has provided its sanctuary, but the night has more to show you. Below, in the courtyards, the palm leaves are whispering, and the shadows of the canopies are waiting to be explored. We begin our descent back toward the ground, the silver light of the roof fading as we move into the darker, more intimate spaces of the courtyard. The transition is soft, a slow movement from the wide sky to the filtered shadows of the palm trees. Ahead, the palm leaf canopies are swaying, and the scent of damp earth is rising to meet us. Stay in this state of deep relaxation as we move toward the next chapter of the night, leaving the stars behind to find the cooling secrets of the shaded garden. You descend the narrow mud-brick stairs, leaving the silver expanse of the roof behind. As you reach the ground, the air feels heavier, yet there is a new softness to it, a fragrance of damp earth and greenery that was missing from the dry wind above. We are moving into the heart of the home's private outdoor space, where the family gathers to find a different kind of relief. This chapter explores the cooling power of the courtyard, a place where the clever use of plant life and woven shade creates a microclimate of peace. Here, the night is not just a time to sleep, but a time for the architecture of nature to breathe. Chapter 4: Palm Leaves and Courtyard Shade. You step off the last stair and into the courtyard, a private square of earth tucked between the high mudbrick walls of the house. The ground here is packed tight and swept clean, still holding a gentle warmth that rises to meet your feet. Above you, the wide open sky of the roof has been replaced by a delicate woven canopy of palm fronds supported by slender wooden poles. The moonlight filters through the gaps in the leaves, casting a complex, shimmering lace of light and shadow across the floor. You feel a sense of intimate enclosure, as if the courtyard is a secret room where the heat of the world is not allowed to enter. You walk toward the center of the space, looking up at the underside of the canopy. The palm leaves are long and tapering, their edges slightly frayed from seasons of wind and sun. They have been woven together in a loose, overlapping pattern that allows the air to move freely while blocking the direct radiation of the moonlit sky. Each frond has a rugged, scaly texture that you can see clearly in the dappled light. When a light breeze passes through the courtyard, the entire structure sighs, a soft, papery rustle that sounds like water moving over stones. It is a living ceiling, flexible and light, designed to move with the night. The moonlight creates a world of stripes on the ground, alternating between bright silver and deep, velvet gray. You watch as the shadows shift with the movement of the palm fronds above, a slow and hypnotic dance that mimics the swaying of the trees along the Nile. The visual patterns are calming, breaking up the solid lines of the mud-brick walls and making the courtyard feel like a natural extension of the riverbanks. You stand in a stripe of silver light, noticing how the air feels different here, less sharp than on the roof, but more humid and soft. It is the breath of the garden, captured in a square of earth. It is a mainstream historical fact that Egyptians utilized these courtyards as primary living and sleeping areas to manage the extreme heat. By shading the packed earth floor during the day with palm canopies, they prevented the ground from absorbing the full intensity of the sun. This meant that by nightfall, the courtyard floor was significantly cooler than the exposed streets outside. You can feel this through the soles of your sandals. The earth here is welcoming, having been protected by the zurf, or palm shelter, for many hours. This intentional shading created a reservoir of cooler air that lingered near the ground, providing a sanctuary for the family as they prepared for rest. You notice 2 children at the far end of the courtyard, working together to move a large reed mat into the center of the shaded area. They grasp the edges of the heavy, woven material, pulling it across the dirt with a rhythmic, scratching sound. The mat is long and wide, designed to hold the entire family in a row. You watch their small hands navigate the rough fibers, their movements quick and certain in the dim light. They don't speak, as if the quiet of the night has commanded them to be silent. Once the mat is in place, they smooth it down, their palms making a soft, shushing noise against the dried reeds. An older woman, the grandmother of the household, moves slowly toward the corners of the mat. She carries several smooth, heavy stones and small blocks of sun-dried clay in the folds of her linen tunic. You watch as she kneels with a quiet groan, placing a stone on each corner of the reed weave to ensure it does not curl or shift in the night breeze. Her hands are wrinkled and dark, moving with the precision of someone who has performed this task thousands of times. She pats the center of the mat, checking its firmness, before nodding to the children. It is a small gesture of stability in a world of shifting temperatures. A quirky historical detail involves the practice of lightly dampening the palm fronds of the canopy just before the family settled down. You see a young man standing near one of the supporting poles, using a long-handled wooden scoop to flick droplets of water from a jar onto the woven leaves above. The water creates a faint, pleasant pattering sound as it hits the dry palms. As the night air moves through these dampened leaves, it encourages a rapid, subtle evaporation that chills the air as it descends into the courtyard. You feel a sudden, sweet drop of moisture hit your arm, followed by a faint, refreshing chill that rolls off the canopy. The air beneath the palm leaves carries a distinct scent, a mixture of dried vegetation, wet earth, and the faint, sweet aroma of the Nile mud. It is a grounding smell, one that speaks of the river's life-giving cycle. You breathe it in, feeling the humidity soften the dry heat of your throat. The canopy acts as a filter, trapping the heavier, dust-laden air of the street and allowing only the cleaner, scented breeze of the interior to reach the sleeping mats. You feel the tension leaving your body as you stand in this fragrant shadow, the rustling leaves above providing a constant, low-frequency music that drowns out the distant sounds of the town. Near the entrance to the house, a small clay lantern sits on a low mudbrick ledge, its flame guarded by a tall, curved screen made of woven palm ribs. You watch the light flicker behind the screen, casting a soft orange glow that illuminates the grandmother's face as she adjusts her linen shawl. The screen is essential. Without it, the very breezes the family seeks would extinguish the light. The lantern's glow is steady and warm, providing just enough light to see the edges of the courtyard without overwhelming the silver piece of the moonlight. It is a tiny, captured star, held safe from the wind by the craft of the garden. There is a gentle scholarly uncertainty regarding whether these courtyards were always private family spaces, or if they occasionally served as communal areas for several connected households. Some researchers suggest that in the dense worker villages, courtyards were shared, creating a collective cooling zone where neighbors slept side by side. Others argue that the Egyptian sense of domestic privacy was too strong, and each home maintained its own walled garden. As you look at the high walls surrounding you, it feels like a deeply personal space, a private world where the family's routines are hidden from the eyes of the street, a silent agreement between the home and the sky. At the edge of the courtyard, near the base of the mud-brick wall, you notice a few tiny rhythmic flickers of light. They are fireflies, or perhaps small bioluminescent beetles, moving slowly through the shadows of the palms. Their pale green glow is a mirror to the stars above, a tiny biological light that adds to the magic of the night. They move with a weightless grace, disappearing into the darkness of a storage jar, only to reappear near the grandmother's feet. Their presence is a sign of the life that thrives in these shaded corners, a reminder that the courtyard is a living ecosystem that welcomes the small and the quiet. The family is now settled on the mat, their shapes reclining in the striped moonlight. The rustle of the palm leaves above is the only sound, a constant, soothing whisper that promises a long and undisturbed rest. You stand at the edge of the courtyard, feeling the coolness of the dampened palms and the stillness of the protected earth. The courtyard has done its work, providing a shaded, humid refuge from the dry heat of the night. But the secrets of the water are still to be explored. Deep in the corners of the house, the clay jars are waiting, breathing their own liquid chill into the shadows. We leave the whispering palms of the courtyard, moving slowly toward the darker corners of the home where the water is kept. The transition is a quiet one, a movement from the filtered light of the garden to the cool, rhythmic pulse of the clay. Ahead, the large jars are glowing in the dim light, their surfaces dark with the moisture of the night. Stay with the feeling of the soft earth under your feet as we move toward the next chapter of the night, discovering the simple genius of the breathing clay and the water of the Nile. You leave the whispering palms of the courtyard, moving slowly toward the darker, more secluded corners of the home where the water is kept. The transition is a quiet one, a movement from the filtered moonlight of the garden to a space that feels like a subterranean grotto, cool and thick with the scent of damp earth. Here, the heat of the night is further dismantled by the simple ancient genius of clay. You follow a low, mudbrick corridor until you reach the storage alcove, a small room where the walls seem to hold a deeper chill. Ahead, the large water jars are standing in the shadows, their dark, rounded shapes appearing like silent guardians of the night's rest. You walk toward the cluster of jars, your footsteps muffled by the soft, damp silt of the floor. There are 3 large vessels, each standing nearly waist-high, their wide bellies tapering down to narrow bases that rest in shallow depressions in the earth. In the dim light of a single oil lamp, you notice how the surfaces of the jars are not dry, but covered in a fine, shimmering veil of moisture. They look as if they have been pulled recently from the river, but this is the clay's own work. You reach out and touch the side of the nearest jar, finding the surface to be shockingly cool, a sharp and refreshing contrast to the warm air of the hallway. The moisture on your fingertips is the result of the clay breathing. It is a mainstream historical fact that ancient Egyptian potters used a specific mixture of porous Nile silt and fine sand to create these water vessels, known as zir. Because the clay was not glazed, it remained slightly permeable, allowing microscopic amounts of water to seep through the walls to the outer surface. As the dry night air moves across the jar, it encourages this water to evaporate, a process that consumes the heat from the liquid inside. You are touching one of the world's first refrigeration systems, a silent, energy-free machine that uses the desert's own dryness to create a liquid sanctuary of cold. You run your fingers along the neck of the jar, feeling the rough, earthy texture of the unglazed clay. Beneath your hand, you can feel the faint, swirling ridges left by the potter's wheel, a tactile record of a human hand that shaped this earth weeks or months ago. You notice how the clay feels alive, pulsating with a slow thermal rhythm as it exhales its damp breath into the room. The air immediately surrounding the jars is noticeably fresher, a small bubble of relief that makes your lungs feel light. You lean your forehead against the cool rim for a moment, letting the deep chill of the pottery settle into your skin. In the corner of the room, a young man, a potter who works late into the cool hours, is finishing a new vessel by the light of a small lamp. You watch as he uses a smooth, wet stone to polish the rim of a drying jar, his movements slow and hypnotic. The sound is a rhythmic, wet sliding, a quiet friction that fills the room with a sense of patient craft. He works with a deep concentration, his fingers sensitive to every bump or flaw in the clay. The smell of raw, wet earth is stronger here, a primal and comforting scent that speaks of the river's bounty and the creative power of the human hand. As he pauses, he lifts his hand and gives the side of a finished dry jar a sharp, playful tap with his knuckles. The sound that erupts is a clear, ringing tone, a deep resonance that vibrates through the air of the alcove. This is how the potter tests the integrity of his work. A clear ring means the clay has dried evenly and is ready to hold the weight of the Nile. The sound is beautiful, a singular, musical note that hangs in the darkness for a second, before fading into the silence. You feel the vibration in the floor beneath your feet, a reminder that the home itself is a hollow instrument of earth. Tucked near the base of the largest jar, you notice a small, crudely fashioned clay amulet shaped like a crocodile. It is a quirky historical detail of domestic life. Many families placed small charms near their water stores to invoke the protection of Sobek, the river god. The crocodile was believed to keep the water alive and prevent it from becoming stagnant or sour in the summer heat. The little figure is painted with a few simple lines of green pigment, its tiny, unblinking eyes staring out at the room. You touch the amulet, finding it cool and gritty, a small, humble anchor for the family's faith in the river's enduring power. A soft, rhythmic thudding sounds from the street outside, and soon 2 water-bearers enter the courtyard, carrying heavy skin bags filled with fresh water from the Nile. They move with a slow, heavy-shouldered grace, their skin glistening with sweat and river spray. You watch as they carefully pour the water into the large jars, the sound a deep, hollow gurgling that echoes in the storage room. This nightly refill is essential. By bringing the water in after the sun has fallen, they ensure it starts the cooling process at the lowest possible temperature. The water is murky and dark at first, swirling with the minerals of the highlands, before it settles in the deep belly of the clay. You watch a young girl approach the jars with a small, handleless cup made of thin, red-slipped pottery. She dips the cup into the jar, the sound of the water a soft, liquid plip in the quiet. When she brings the cup to her lips, you see her close her eyes, savoring the temperature of the drink. This water does not have the metallic bite of a modern pipe. It tastes of the earth and the river, chilled by the breath of the clay to a temperature that feels like a soft, liquid shadow. She offers the cup to you, and as you take it, the condensation on the outside of the pottery makes your palm feel instantly refreshed. There is a gentle scholarly uncertainty regarding the exact level of scientific intent behind these jars. While some researchers believe the Egyptians understood the mechanics of evaporative cooling and intentionally sought out porous silts for this purpose, others suggest the design was purely traditional, an accidental genius that was simply repeated because it worked. As you feel the cool draft rising from the jars, the distinction feels unimportant. Whether born of science or of long, observant tradition, the jars represent a perfect harmony between the needs of the human body and the properties of the earth. The clay is a partner in the family's search for rest. Near the jar, a mother is soaking a strip of thin linen in the chilled water, wringing it out until it is merely damp. She carries the cloth back to the courtyard, where her youngest child is tossing restlessly on a reed mat. You watch as she gently dabs the cool, wet fabric across the boy's forehead and wrists. The child's breathing immediately slows, his muscles relaxing as the moisture strips the heat from his skin. It is a quiet, nightly medicine, a way to use the river's cold to soothe a body that has been scorched by the day. The water evaporates quickly in the night air, leaving only a lingering sense of peace. The storage room remains a place of deep, liquid quiet, the jars continuing their silent work of exhaling the heat. You stand among them for a final moment, breathing in the scent of wet stone and the refreshing, humid air. The water is ready, the jars are full, and the family has found the first true relief of the night. But the body needs more than just water to find sleep. It needs the soft embrace of a material that can breathe. Ahead, in the sleeping quarters, the linen is being prepared, its fine threads waiting to catch the breeze and carry the spirit into the world of dreams. We leave the cool, damp sanctuary of the water jars, moving toward the open rooms where the beds are waiting. The transition is a soft one, a movement from the weight of the clay to the lightness of the weave. The air in the sleeping area is moving, and the scent of fresh flax is beginning to fill the space. Stay in this state of quiet wonder as we move toward the next chapter of the night, discovering the soft, protective magic of Egyptian linen and the art of the breathable bed. You leave the liquid silence of the water jars, the scent of damp earth clinging to your skin as you move back toward the main living area. The transition is a soft one, a movement from the heavy, protective weight of the clay to a space that feels light and airy. The moonlight now pours through the open doorways, illuminating bundles of pale fabric that hang from wooden frames like soft, captured clouds. Here the air is not just cooled by the earth, but filtered through the fine, breathable weave of the land's most precious textile. You are entering a world of flax and fiber, where the secret to rest lies in the delicate touch of cloth against the skin. Chapter 6. Linen against the skin. As you walk into the sleeping quarters, your eyes are drawn to the long, translucent lengths of linen hanging from horizontal wooden beams near the ceiling. In the silver moonlight, the fabric appears almost ethereal, glowing with a soft, internal brilliance that makes the room feel larger. You reach out and let a piece of the cloth slide between your fingers. It is incredibly thin, yet it possesses a crisp, cool strength that feels refreshing to the touch. The scent of the linen is distinct, a clean, grassy aroma of sun-dried flax mixed with a faint hint of wood smoke. Each movement of the fabric creates a tiny, rhythmic whisper, a sound of soft friction that speaks of 1,000 years of weaving. You notice a small, low wooden frame in the corner where a young woman is seated, her hands moving with a slow, hypnotic rhythm as she twists raw flax into fine thread. Her fingers are nimble and coated in a fine white dust, pulling the long, silver-blue fibers from a bundle beside her. You watch as she rolls the thread against her thigh, a rhythmic motion that has been perfected by generations of Egyptian women. The thread is strong and even, the building block of the very sheets that will protect the family from the night's heat. The quiet shush of the fiber against her skin is the only sound in this corner of the room, a peaceful, domestic music. Near the window, a pile of folded linen sheets rests on a low reed mat, their edges neatly aligned. You notice that these are not just plain fabrics, but have been treated with a quiet, sensory care. A small bowl of dried lotus petals and crushed mint leaves sits beside the pile, and as you lift the top sheet, a wave of herbal fragrance rises to meet you. It is a mainstream historical fact that linen was highly conductive, meaning it allowed body heat to pass through it easily while wicking away perspiration. This made it the perfect material for a world where the skin needs to breathe, acting as a lightweight shield that never traps the warmth of the sleeper. You walk toward a large, hanging linen curtain that serves as a doorway between the inner rooms. As a warm gust of wind finds its way through the house, the curtain billows outward, its thin weave acting like a filter for the dust while allowing the air to move freely. You stand behind the moving fabric, feeling the breeze as it is softened and cooled by the linen. The moonlight creates a dancing play of shadows on the cloth, revealing the tiny, irregular knots of the hand-woven thread. It is a beautiful, functional boundary, a piece of the riverbank brought indoors to guard the family's rest. A quirky historical detail of Egyptian life involves the practice of scenting the linen with small cones of aromatic fat or by placing herbs directly within the folds of the cloth. You see an older woman mending a night tunic, and beside her, a small clay jar holds a mixture of lotus oil and beeswax. She occasionally rubs a tiny amount of the oil onto the seams of the garment, ensuring that as the wearer moves in their sleep, a soft, floral aroma is released. You touch the hem of the tunic and find it subtly fragrant, a sensory trick that turns the act of sleeping into a fragrant ritual, masking the heavy scent of the sun-baked earth. In the center of the room, a child is helping his mother spread a long, white linen sheet over a low wooden frame. They work in tandem, each holding a corner and letting the fabric snap softly in the air before it settles over the woven support. You watch as the boy smooths out the wrinkles with his small palms, his movements careful and proud. The sheet is so light that it seems to float for a second before touching the bed, a white cloud caught in the dim light of the lamp. It is a simple gesture of preparation, a way to ensure that the resting place is as smooth and cool as the surface of the Nile. There is a gentle scholarly uncertainty regarding the famous wet sheet theory, with some researchers suggesting that Egyptians may have soaked their linen in water before wrapping themselves in it to endure the most extreme heat waves. Others argue that the high humidity of the Nile Valley would have made this uncomfortable, and that dry, breathable linen was the true preference. As you watch a woman lightly sprinkle a few drops of water from a ceramic cup onto the edges of a hanging sheet, you see how the moisture encourages the breeze to carry a faint chill. Perhaps the practice was a personal choice, a desperate but effective measure for the hottest nights of the year. You move toward a wooden chest where the family's finest linens are stored, the lid carved with images of papyrus stalks. Inside, the fabric is even thinner, almost like a second skin, reserved for the hottest months when even the lightest weight feels like a burden. You touch a folded shawl and find it surprisingly cool, the flax fibers having held the stillness of the interior. These garments are not just clothing. They are pieces of the land, grown in the river mud and bleached by the desert sun until they are pure and white. They represent a deep material wisdom, a way to dress the body in the coolness of the earth. The moonlight through the high window catches the texture of a hanging linen sheet, revealing the thousands of tiny gaps between the threads. You realize that this is the secret of the cloth's power. It is an open structure that invites the air to pass through while reflecting the moon's silver light away from the body. It is a material that understands the sun, having lived its entire life in the fields of the delta. You feel a sense of profound respect for the weavers who turned the rugged stalks of the flax plant into this soft, protective veil, a craft that turns the night into a sanctuary of breath. By the wall, an oil lamp flickers behind a thin linen screen, its orange glow softened and diffused into a warm, amber haze. The screen prevents the flame from dancing too wildly in the draft, while casting a gentle light across the sleeping area. You watch the shadows of the flax bundles move against the screen, a quiet, flickering play of light that seems to slow the heart. The room is a tapestry of white and shadow, a place where the visual and the tactile meet to create a sense of absolute safety. The linen is the final layer of the home's defense, a soft barrier between the self and the world. As the hour moves forward, the family begins to settle, their bodies draped in the light, white tunics and sheets. The sound of the fabric shifting against the reed mats is like a soft, dry rain, a rhythmic rustling that marks the beginning of the dream hour. You stand in the center of the room, feeling the breeze move through the linen and across your own skin, the scent of lotus and flax filling your senses. The cloth has provided its comfort, turning the heat of the night into a gentle, breathable memory. But the earth and the cloth need a structure to hold them, a way to lift the sleeper toward the wind. We leave the soft white world of the linen behind, moving toward the beds that stand in the center of the room. The transition is a quiet one, a movement from the texture of the fabric to the sturdy, polished grain of the wood. The beds are raised and waiting, their woven supports ready to catch the currents of the night. Ahead, the wooden headrests are glowing in the dim light, and the scent of acacia is rising to meet us. Stay in this state of deep relaxation as we move toward the next chapter of the night, discovering the art of the Egyptian bed and the secret of the raised sleep. You leave the soft, white world of the linen behind, moving toward the beds that stand in the center of the room. The transition is a quiet one, a movement from the texture of the fabric to the sturdy, polished grain of the wood. The beds are raised and waiting, their woven supports ready to catch the currents of the night. Ahead, the wooden headrests are glowing in the dim light, and the scent of acacia is rising to meet us. Stay in this state of deep relaxation as we move toward the next chapter of the night, discovering the art of the Egyptian bed and the secret of the raised sleep. Chapter 7. Beds, Headrests, and Raised Sleep. You step closer to the center of the room, where the bed frames stand like low, elegant altars in the moonlight. These are not the heavy, solid blocks of furniture you might expect, but light, graceful structures carved from the dark, reddish-brown wood of the acacia tree. You reach out and run your hand along the side of a frame, feeling the cool, polished surface and the smooth, rounded corners that have been worn down by years of use. The wood feels dense and reliable, a sturdy anchor in a room filled with shifting breezes. There is a faint, sweet smell of tree resin and beeswax polish that lingers in the grain, a scent of the sun-baked forest brought indoors. Instead of a solid board or a heavy mattress, the center of the bed is a taut, springy lattice made of woven linen rope or strips of supple leather. You press your palm into the weave, feeling the rhythmic tension as it yields slightly before pushing back against your hand. The lattice is intricate, a repeating pattern of diamonds and squares that allows the air to move through the very heart of the bed. It is a masterpiece of functional design, a flexible support that conforms to the shape of the body while ensuring that the heat of the sleeper is never trapped against a solid surface. You can feel the coolness of the floor rising through the gaps in the rope. It is a mainstream historical fact that ancient Egyptian beds were intentionally raised on 4 carved legs to facilitate airflow around the entire body. In a climate where the ground stays warm long after sunset, lifting the sleeper even a few inches off the floor allows the heavier, cooler night air to circulate beneath them. You notice that the legs of the bed are carved to resemble the paws of a lion or the hooves of a gazelle, a common motif that suggests the bed is a living thing, ready to carry the sleeper safely through the night. This elevation turns the bed into a cooling platform, catching the drafts that move near the ground and pulling the heat away. In the center of the head of the bed, you see a small curved object made of polished sycamore wood. This is the wares, the traditional Egyptian headrest, and it stands like a crescent moon on a slender pedestal. You lift it, surprised by how light and smooth it feels in your hands. There are no soft pillows here. Instead, the headrest is designed to cradle the back of the neck, keeping the head itself suspended in the air. You notice a few faint scratches on the wood, marks of a life lived in a world where even sleep is a carefully crafted art. The headrest glows with a soft amber light, a silent sentry for the mind. You lie back on the woven rope lattice, feeling the frame support your weight with a quiet, sturdy creak. As you settle your neck into the curve of the wooden headrest, you experience a strange and wonderful sensation. Because your head is lifted away from the bed, the night breeze is free to move entirely around your neck and through your hair. The heat that usually gathers at the back of the head vanishes instantly, replaced by a constant, refreshing flow of air. It is a feeling of weightlessness, as if your thoughts are being aired out by the wind. The wooden support feels firm but perfectly shaped, a cool crescent that anchors you to the night. A quirky historical detail of the Egyptian headrest involves the belief that it not only kept the sleeper cool, but also protected the elaborate hairstyles and wigs worn by the elite. You notice a small linen pad placed over the wooden curve, perhaps to soften the contact just enough without blocking the air. Some people even tucked small amulets of the god Bez, the protector of households, into the base of the headrest to ward off nightmares and snakes. You run your thumb over the base of the wood and feel a tiny carved figure hidden in the shadows, a silent guardian for the vulnerable hours of the deep night. Beneath the bed, in the deepest shadows near the lion paws, a wide ceramic basin has been placed on the floor. It is filled to the brim with river water, its surface as still and dark as obsidian. You reach down and trail your fingers through the water, feeling a sudden, sharp chill that makes your skin tingle. As the night air moves under the raised bed frame, it passes directly over this basin, encouraging a slow and steady evaporation. This process creates a constant updraft of chilled, humid air that rises through the rope lattice to bathe the sleeper in a liquid coolness. It is a hidden engine of comfort, working silently in the dark. There is a gentle scholarly uncertainty regarding the exact orientation of the beds within the home. While some researchers suggest that beds were always aligned with the north-south axis to catch the prevailing winds, others argue that religious beliefs dictated a westward orientation toward the land of the setting sun. You notice that this bed is angled slightly toward the open doorway, positioned to catch the specific draft that pulls through the courtyard. Perhaps the choice was purely practical, a nightly adjustment made by the father of the house as he tested the air with the back of his hand. The bed is a compass, pointing toward the coolest part of the world. The family begins to adjust their positions, the wooden frames groaning softly as they find their rhythm. You watch as a man nudges his bed a few inches to the left, seeking the exact spot where the window's draft meets the courtyard's breeze. There is a slow, quiet choreography to this movement, a way of reading the house to find the invisible streams of air. The beds are light enough to be moved with ease, allowing the family to follow the coolness as it shifts throughout the night. It is a dynamic way to sleep, a constant conversation between the body, the furniture, and the movement of the atmosphere. As the lamp is extinguished, the moonlight catches the polished grain of the acacia wood, making the bed frames appear to float in the dark. You see the long, elegant shadows of the lion paws stretching across the mud floor, and the silver light reflecting off the water in the basin below. The room is quiet, filled only with the soft, rhythmic breathing of the family and the occasional gentle rustle of the rope lattice. You feel a sense of profound security, lifted away from the warm earth and held in the cooling embrace of the wood and the wind. The structure of rest is complete, a sturdy bridge into the world of dreams. The hour of the raised sleep has arrived, and the heat of the day has finally been conquered by the elevation and the air. You lie still, feeling the steady updraft from the water basin and the firm, cool support of the headrest. The room is a sanctuary of geometry and breath, a place where the wooden frame and the woven rope work in perfect harmony. But the body needs more than just elevation. It needs the tactile comfort of the earth's own fibers. Ahead, in the quiet corners of the courtyard, the reed mats are waiting, their intricate weaves holding the memory of the river and the secret of the textured rest. We leave the sturdy wooden beds behind, moving slowly toward the open courtyards where the reed mats are being laid. The transition is a soft one, a movement from the polished grain of the acacia to the earthy, sun-dried scent of the river reeds. The air is growing cooler as the night deepens, and the sound of the reeds is rising to meet us. Stay in this state of deep relaxation as we move toward the next chapter of the night, discovering the humble beauty of the reed mat and the texture of the ancient rest. You leave the sturdy wooden beds behind, moving slowly toward the open courtyards where the reed mats are being laid. The transition is a soft one, a movement from the polished grain of the acacia to the earthy, sun-dried scent of the river reeds. The air is growing cooler as the night deepens, and the sound of the reeds is rising to meet us. Stay in this state of deep relaxation as we move toward the next chapter of the night, discovering the humble beauty of the reed mat and the texture of the ancient rest. Chapter 8. Reed Mats and the Texture of Rest. You step away from the polished acacia bed frames and move toward the outer edge of the courtyard, where the ground is softer and the moonlight is less interrupted by walls. Here, the floor is covered in a series of large rectangular mats woven from the reeds of the Nile. In the low, flickering light of a nearby oil lamp, the mats catch the glow, their golden brown fibers shimmering with a soft, metallic sheen. You notice how the edges are neatly bound with twisted grass rope, keeping the weave tight and orderly. The air here is still, but the ground feels ready for the night, a quiet expanse of texture waiting to cradle the household in its humble, earthy embrace. You kneel on the edge of a mat and press your hand against the weave. The texture is a series of tiny, rhythmic ridges that feel cool and dry against your skin. Unlike the solid wood of the bed, the reed mat feels vibrant and porous, a living surface that seems to pull the coolness of the earth upward. You trace the path of a single reed, noticing how it has been flattened and smoothed before being woven into the pattern. There is a gentle flexibility to the material. It yields slightly under the pressure of your weight, but remains firm enough to provide a stable foundation. You inhale the scent of sun-dried grass, a comforting, field-like aroma. It is a mainstream historical fact that reed mats were the most common and essential sleeping tool for the majority of the Egyptian population. Crafted from halfa grass or papyrus, these mats were versatile, portable, and perfectly suited for the arid climate. They were cheap to produce and easy to replace, yet their design was sophisticated in its simplicity. The gaps between the woven fibers allowed the ground's cooler air to interact directly with the sleeper's body, preventing the buildup of heat that would occur on a solid surface. You realize that these humble mats are not just floor coverings, but a sophisticated piece of climate-adaptive technology that has supported countless generations through the long desert nights. Nearby, you watch a father and son prepare their sleeping area with a quiet, practiced efficiency. They lift a long mat by its corners and give it a sharp, rhythmic snap in the air, a movement that sends a fine cloud of golden dust into the moonlight. The sound is a crisp, dry rustle, like the movement of wind through the marshlands. They lay the mat down again, smoothing it with their bare feet until it sits perfectly flat against the earth. You notice the care they take to ensure no stones or twigs remain beneath the weave. This nightly dusting is a small act of devotion, a way to purify the space before the silence of sleep takes over. In the corner of one mat, a young girl has left her favorite toy, A small doll, woven entirely from leftover reed scraps and palm fiber. You reach down and touch the tiny, articulated arms, finding the texture to be rough but strangely charming. The doll has no face, yet it carries the warmth of the child's hands, a quiet companion for the hours of darkness. The girl settles onto the mat, her head resting on a small linen pad, her fingers brushing the edge of the woven doll as she drifts towards sleep. It is a scene of profound domestic peace, a reminder that even in a world of extreme heat, the small comforts of childhood remain the same. You move toward the back of the courtyard, where a man is seated cross-legged, his hands moving with a steady, rhythmic speed as he weaves a new mat by the light of a small lantern. He holds a bundle of wet reeds in his lap, pulling them, one by one, into a vertical lattice of strong, twisted rope. You hear the soft click-clack of the wooden batten as he pushes the new row into place, a sound that repeats with the precision of a heartbeat. The wet reeds smell of the river mud, a fresh and fertile scent that fills the air around him. He works with a quiet patience, creating a masterpiece of utility from the simple gifts of the Nile. Beside the weaver, two sisters are meticulously repairing an older mat that has frayed at the edges. One sister holds a small, sharp bronze knife, carefully trimming away the loose fibers, while the other threads a long, supple reed through the existing weave to reinforce the boundary. Their movements are collaborative and silent, a testament to the culture of repair that defined the ancient Egyptian household. You notice how the new reeds are a paler, greener color than the sun-bleached gold of the original mat, creating a beautiful, striped pattern of old and new. This constant maintenance ensures that nothing is wasted and that the comfort of the family is always preserved. A quirky historical detail involves the practice of sprinkling scented water directly onto the reed mats just before the family retires for the night. You watch as a woman dips a small bundle of hyssop into a jar of water infused with mint and desert herbs, flicking the droplets across the woven surface. The water darkens the reeds in a series of tiny rhythmic splashes, and as it evaporates, a sudden, sharp wave of fragrance rises to meet you. The scent is remarkably refreshing, cooling the air and the material in a single, sensory stroke. You feel the coolness of the damp reeds through your sandals, a fleeting but delightful relief that makes the heat seem more distant. Near the edge of the courtyard, a small dog has found its way onto a corner of a discarded mat, curling into a tight, contented circle. It rests its chin on its paws, its ears occasionally twitching at the sound of a distant night bird. Even the animals in this world understand the value of the reed weave. It provides a barrier against the insects of the soil while allowing the night air to circulate around the body. You watch the slow, rhythmic rise and fall of the dog's flank, its breath a quiet, steady presence in the darkness. The courtyard is a shared sanctuary, a place where all living things find their place in the textured quiet of the Egyptian night. There is a gentle, scholarly uncertainty regarding the layering of these mats during the hottest seasons. While some researchers suggest that Egyptians used multiple layers of mats to create a thicker, more cushioned sleeping surface, others believe they used only a single mat to maximize the flow of air from the earth below. You notice that some mats in the courtyard are stacked in pairs, while others lie alone in the center of the breeze. Perhaps the choice depended on the age of the sleeper or the specific temperature of the ground that night. It is a reminder that even the simplest tools allowed for a degree of personal adjustment and practical wisdom in the face of the heat. You lift a corner of a mat to see the ground beneath, noticing how the weave has left a rhythmic, diamond-shaped pattern in the soft dust. A faint current of air moves through the space you've created, a cool draft that has been trapped beneath the reeds. You realize that the mat acts as a bridge between the body and the earth, a breathable structure that honors the heat of the climate while providing the comfort of the home. The texture of the reeds is the texture of the river itself, dried and shaped by human hands to become a vessel for rest. You let the mat fall back into place, the sound a soft, final thud in the quiet evening. The courtyard is now a sea of golden mats, each one holding a sleeper in the silver light of the moon. The rustle of the reeds has faded into a deep, collective silence, a stillness that marks the peak of the night's rest. You stand at the center of the space, feeling the cool air move across the textured floor and the scent of mint lingering in the air. The mats have provided their earthy sanctuary, but the night is not yet finished. Above the walls, the wind is shifting, and the house is preparing to catch the turning breeze. Stay in this state of deep calm as we prepare to move toward the next chapter of the night. You leave the textured quiet of the reed mats behind, moving toward the narrow spaces where the house meets the street. The night has reached a point of deep stillness, yet the air itself is far from stagnant. It is beginning to move in a slow, invisible dance. Between 9 and 10 in the evening on our journey, we explore the invisible architecture of the wind, discovering how the ancient Egyptians read the currents of the night to find relief. It is a time of subtle observation, where the flutter of a linen curtain or the angle of a high vent determines the quality of rest. We are following the path of the breeze as it wanders through the mudbrick labyrinth. Chapter 9. Reading the Wind. You step into the narrow gap between your home and the next, a passage so tight that you can reach out and touch both walls at once. The air here is not heavy like it was in the center of the street. Instead, it moves with a surprising focused energy. The narrowness of the alleyway acts as a natural wind tunnel, squeezing the gentle night breeze and forcing it to accelerate. You stand still for a moment, feeling the air rush past your neck and through your hair, a constant, cooling stream that carries the scent of the dry desert. It is a quiet, architectural secret, a way to turn the smallest breath of the night into a refreshing draft. High above you, the moonlight catches the sharp edges of the ventilation slits, cut into the upper reaches of the mudbrick walls. These windows are small and triangular, positioned specifically to catch the prevailing north wind that blows off the Mediterranean and follows the Nile south. It is a mainstream historical fact that ancient Egyptians designed their homes with a keen understanding of air movement, utilizing high-level vents to allow hot air to rise and escape, while drawing cooler air in from below. You see the faint, rhythmic pulse of the curtains inside these vents, a sign that the house is exhaling the day's heat and inhaling the cool promise of the night. You walk back into the main room of the house, where the linen curtains at the doorway are beginning to snap softly in the rising wind. The fabric moves with a slow, ghostly grace, its pale weave catching the lamplight as it billows inward. You reach out and touch the cloth, feeling the vibration of the wind as it is filtered through the fibers. This curtain is not just for privacy. It is a regulator of the climate, breaking the force of the wind while allowing the freshness to spread across the room. The sound of the linen moving is a soft, rhythmic patter, a heartbeat of fabric that signals the arrival of the night's true cooling. In the corner, you notice a woman seated on a low stool, her hands moving in a slow, rhythmic arc as she uses a hand fan made of woven palm leaves. The fan is shaped like a large, rounded leaf, its edges reinforced with a thin rim of polished wood. With every deliberate stroke, a wave of air is pushed across the sleeping area, a manual breeze that supplements the natural draft of the house. You feel the air hit your skin in a series of cooling pulses, a quiet and persistent movement that helps the body release the last of its daytime warmth. The fan moves with a soft swish, a peaceful, repetitive sound in the dim light. A quirky historical detail of the Egyptian night involves the practice of dampening these hand fans with a few drops of water before use. You watch as the woman dips the edge of her palm fan into a small clay bowl, then resumes her steady rhythm. As she waves the fan, the moisture evaporates instantly in the dry air, creating a tiny, localized mist that feels remarkably chilled as it reaches you. It is a humble form of personal air conditioning, a way to use the energy of the hand to create a sensory oasis. You feel the faint, sweet chill on your forearms, a momentary but delightful relief from the lingering heat. You notice a series of low vents near the floor, almost hidden by the shadows of the grain jars. These openings are positioned directly opposite the high windows, creating a path for cross-ventilation that pulls the air across the entire width of the room. You kneel and place your hand near the vent, feeling a steady, cool draft that flows inward from the shaded courtyard. The air here is heavy and fresh, having been cooled by the damp earth and the water jars outside. It is a reminder that the house is a living system, a structure that knows how to balance the pressures of the atmosphere to protect its inhabitants. There is a gentle scholarly uncertainty regarding the extent to which ordinary Egyptians intentionally engineered these drafts, or if the cooling was an organic byproduct of building in high-density neighborhoods. Some researchers argue that the malkaf, or wind catcher, was a sophisticated architectural feature found only in elite homes, while others suggest that even modest houses used rudimentary versions of these towers to scoop the wind from the sky. As you watch the family move their mats to align with the draft, the debate feels secondary to the reality of the comfort. Whether by grand design or through centuries of local wisdom, the house has become a perfect vessel for the wind. The family begins a quiet, nightly choreography, shifting their sleeping mats by just a few inches to better catch the turning breeze. You watch as the father tests the air with the back of his hand, searching for the exact point where the currents of the courtyard meet the draft from the high vents. Once the spot is found, they settle down, their bodies positioned to allow the air to flow over them without obstruction. There is a deep, practical intelligence in this movement, a way of living that respects the invisible laws of the climate. The house is not a static box, but a landscape of shifting currents that the family navigates with ease. You look up at the linen screen near the bed, noticing how it has been angled to act as a sail, catching the air from the doorway and bending it toward the sleeper. The fabric is taut, vibrating slightly with the energy of the night wind. It is a simple, beautiful solution that turns a piece of cloth into a tool of direction. The sound of the wind through the linen is a constant, low-frequency hum, a soothing white noise that drowns out the distant barking of a dog or the rustle of the palms. You feel the air moving across your own skin, a steady, rhythmic touch that carries the spirit of the river into the room. Near the back of the room, an older man is adjusting a large, woven screen made of thin reeds, sliding it across a wide opening to regulate the flow of the air. He moves with a slow, heavy-shouldered grace, his eyes fixed on the fluttering curtains. He knows that if the wind grows too strong, it will bring the dust of the desert into the house. If it is too weak, the heat will return. He finds the perfect balance, leaving the screen just open enough to maintain the refreshing draft. It is a task of subtle observation, a way of reading the night to ensure the family remains protected and cool. The night wind is now at its peak, a steady and reliable presence that fills the house with the scent of the Nile and the dry, clean aroma of the limestone cliffs. You stand in the center of the room, feeling the air move from the low vents to the high windows, a constant cycle of renewal that sweeps away the stagnant heat of the day. The house is breathing deeply now, its mudbrick lungs working in perfect harmony with the sky. You feel a sense of profound connection to the elements, a realization that the wind is a guest that has been invited into the home to provide the gift of rest. The hour of reading the wind is drawing to a close, and the air in the house is now as fresh as the riverbank at dawn. The family is quiet, their breathing synchronized with the soft snapping of the linen curtains. You stand in the draft for a final moment, feeling the coolness settle into your bones and the peace of the moving air fill your thoughts. The wind has provided its sanctuary, but the body still seeks the purity of the water. Ahead, in the washing area, the clay basins are waiting, and the scent of natron is rising to meet us. We leave the moving air of the vents and curtains behind, moving slowly toward the quiet corners of the house where the water basins are prepared. The transition is a soft one, a movement from the texture of the wind to the liquid grace of the river water. The moonlight is reflecting off the ceramic rims, and the sound of splashing is rising to meet us. Stay in this state of deep relaxation as we move toward the next chapter of the night, discovering the refreshing ritual of the nighttime wash and the secret of the cool skin. You move through the shadows to the back of the courtyard, where the air is still and the sound of trickling water grows louder. A low mudbrick bench holds a wide ceramic basin, its rim smoothed by the touch of countless hands over many years. The moonlight hits the surface of the water, turning it into a shimmering silver mirror that reflects the high, triangular vents of the house. You feel the humidity rising from the basin, a gentle invitation to wash away the grit of the day. The texture of the clay is cool and damp beneath your fingers as you lean over the water, the scent of the river rising to meet you in the quiet night. You dip your hand into the water, and the sudden, sharp chill sends a ripple of relief up your arm. The water is not cold like ice, but it has the deep, grounded coolness of the Nile's depths, preserved in the shade of the mudbrick. As you lift your hand, the silver droplets fall back into the basin with a soft, rhythmic plip-plop, breaking the moon's reflection into 1,000 dancing sparks. You watch the water trail down your wrist, stripping the salt and heat from your skin as it goes. This liquid touch is the first true surrender to sleep, a physical turning away from the fire of the sun. Beside the basin sits a small, shallow bowl filled with a white crystalline powder. This is natron, a naturally occurring salt harvested from the dry beds of the desert. It is a mainstream historical fact that Egyptians used natron as a primary cleansing agent, mixing it with water to create a gentle, abrasive paste that dissolved oils and softened the skin. You take a pinch between your fingers, feeling its fine, sandy grit before mixing it into a small amount of water in your palm. The paste feels cool and tingly as you rub it over your forearms, the minerals working to pull the deep-seated heat and dust from your pores in the dim light. You pick up a small, handleless clay cup and scoop a portion of water from the main basin, pouring it slowly over your neck and shoulders. The water flows in a steady, liquid curtain, tracing the lines of your muscles and pooling briefly at the collar of your linen tunic. You feel your heartbeat slow in response to the temperature change, your body adjusting to the night's new, watery rhythm. The sound of the pouring water is a hollow, splashing music that echoes softly against the mud-brick walls. Each cupful is a deliberate act of cooling, a methodical dismantling of the day's burdens before the final rest begins. A quirky historical detail of the Egyptian night involves the specific focus on cooling the extremities to lower the overall body temperature. You see a father kneeling by the basin, carefully dabbing a damp cloth over his children's ankles and the soles of their feet. He moves with a slow, rhythmic patience, ensuring that the moisture lingers on the skin to encourage the night breeze to do its work. You follow his lead, pressing a wet linen cloth against your own wrists and the back of your knees. The chill is immediate and deep, a refreshing pulse that travels through your veins, making the heavy air feel lighter and more bearable. You notice the children rinsing the fine desert dust from their feet, their small toes curling in the cool water of a secondary, shallower basin. The sound of their splashing is a soft, muffled chatter that blends with the distant hum of the river. As the water washes away the red silt of the fields, the skin beneath appears pale and refreshed in the moonlight. They laughed quietly, a sound like silver bells in the darkness, before stepping onto a dry reed mat to let the air finish the work. The damp footprints they leave behind are dark against the straw, vanishing slowly as the thirsty atmosphere drinks the moisture away. You take a long, rectangular piece of woven linen and dip it entirely into the basin, watching as the fibers darken and grow heavy with the water. As you wring it out, the sound of the water twisting from the cloth is a sharp, rhythmic crinkle snap, a tactile music of fiber and fluid. The linen feels like a cold, wet weight in your hands, holding the memory of the river within its weave. You drape the damp cloth across your shoulders, feeling the moisture seep into your skin and provide a constant, evaporating chill. This is the simplest of secrets, the marriage of wet cloth and moving air to create an artificial spring. In a corner of the washing area, a small pottery jar holds a handful of dried mint leaves and crushed lotus petals. A woman sprinkles a few of these into the basin, and as they touch the water, a sudden, sharp wave of fragrance rises into the air. The scent is remarkably refreshing, a green and floral aroma that makes the night feel clean and vast. It is a sensory trick, using the cooling properties of mint to signal the mind that the day is over. You breathe in the scented mist, feeling it settle in your lungs like a draft of cold air. As the water in the basin continues to ripple, there is a gentle scholarly uncertainty regarding the frequency of full immersion bathing versus this more common spot cleaning with basins. Some researchers suggest that in the water-conscious desert climate, most people relied on methodical rinsing of the face, hands, and feet rather than full baths. You look at the large ceramic basin and notice how it is perfectly sized for this focused, efficient washing, allowing the family to refresh themselves without wasting a single drop of the river's gift. Whether a full plunge or a careful rinse, the goal remains the same: to strip away the sun's lingering touch and prepare the body for the stillness of sleep. You watch the mother of the household wringing a linen cloth with a slow, twisting motion, her muscles taut in the lamplight. She is preparing a series of damp cloths to be placed near the sleeping mats, ensuring that if anyone wakes in the heat of the night, relief is within reach. Her movements are graceful and rhythmic, a quiet choreography of care that turns a chore into a ritual. She places the damp cloths in a shallow woven basket, the scent of the wet flax and mint rising in a soft cloud. The lantern light catches the droplets on her arms, making her skin shimmer like the surface of the Nile. As you finish your wash, you feel a profound change in your own temperature The frantic, dry heat that once clung to your skin has been replaced by a soft, liquid coolness that allows you to feel the movement of the air more acutely. You stand by the basin, letting the final droplets evaporate from your skin in the breeze that pulls through the courtyard. The silver ripples in the basin slowly settle into a perfect glassy calm, reflecting the stars that are now at their zenith. Your body feels light, your mind feels clear, and the heavy burden of the day has been washed away into the mud. The washing area is growing quiet now, the sound of splashing replaced by the soft rustle of linen as the family returns to their mats. You stand for a final moment in the cool, damp air, feeling the peace of the water settle over you like a blessing. The body is cleansed, the skin is cool, and the night is ready to deliver its final secrets. But even as the ordinary homes grow still, the larger courtyards of the elite are preparing their own nighttime rituals, where servants move in the shadows and the scent of lotus grows stronger. Stay in this state of deep relaxation as we move toward the next chapter. The washing area remains a place of deep, liquid quiet, the sound of the final splashes fading as you step back into the moonlit night. You move away from the modest clusters of mudbrick homes, following a wider, cleaner path that leads toward a grander estate. The walls here are higher, smoothed with a pristine white plaster that reflects the moon like a sheet of still water. You are entering a world of greater space and more deliberate comforts, yet the fundamental challenge remains the same. No matter the status of the dweller, the desert night must still be coaxed into providing rest, and here, that effort is carried out with a quiet, servant-led precision. You pass through a high, arched gateway and find yourself in a spacious courtyard that feels remarkably open to the sky. Unlike the cramped quarters of the workers, this space is framed by elegant, white-plastered columns that reach upward to support a massive, high-reaching canopy of woven reeds. The air here moves with a freedom that surprises you. The height of the walls and the lack of clutter create a natural draft that pulls the river breeze deep into the estate. You stand in the center of the courtyard, noticing how the moonlight illuminates the painted patterns of lotus and papyrus on the pillars, their colors soft and muted in the silver light. In a shaded alcove between two columns, a servant is meticulously preparing a raised sleeping platform for the night. The frame is made of imported cedar, a dark, fragrant wood that glows with a deep, honey-colored light. You watch as he smooths a length of the finest, bleached linen over a woven leather lattice, his hands moving with a steady, rhythmic grace. The fabric is so thin it is almost transparent, a gossamer weight shield against the warmth. The scent of the cedar wood mixes with the clean, sharp aroma of the linen, creating an atmosphere of refined and quiet order that feels immensely restful to the senses. Beside the bed, another servant stands with a large, long-handled fan made of ostrich feathers and palm ribs. She moves the fan in a slow, hypnotic arc, the white feathers rustling softly like a bird's wing as they push a steady stream of air across the linen. You feel the air hit your skin in a gentle, persistent wave, a manual breeze that never falters. This constant motion prevents the air from stagnating, ensuring that the sleeper is always bathed in a moving current. The rhythm of the fan is a peaceful, repetitive music, a heartbeat of movement that makes the wide courtyard feel even cooler. It is a mainstream historical fact that the elite of ancient Egypt utilized a combination of architectural scale and domestic service to mitigate the heat. By building larger, more open-air courtyards and employing servants to manually move the air, they created a microclimate that was significantly more comfortable than the interior rooms. You notice how the servant occasionally pauses to dip the tip of her fan into a shallow bowl of lotus-scented water before resuming her work. The moisture on the feathers creates a faint, invisible mist that chills the air as it moves, a sophisticated luxury that turns the desert night into a garden of damp, floral coolness. You move toward a series of deep niches cut into the northern wall, where specialized ceramic cooling vessels are arranged in a row. These jars are taller and more ornate than the ones you saw earlier, painted with images of water gods and river reeds. You notice how they are placed specifically in the path of the incoming breeze. Their damp, porous walls acting as a secondary cooling system for the entire courtyard. As the wind passes over the vessels, it carries a refreshing, liquid chill toward the sleeping platform. You place your hand in the draft and feel the moisture on your skin, a delicate and constant relief. In a quiet corner of the courtyard, near a small, square reflecting pool, an older servant is sprinkling a fine, fragrant powder across the stone floor. You notice the soft, rhythmic hiss of the powder as it settles, a mixture of crushed lotus petals, dried mint, and a hint of frankincense. The scent is intoxicating, a cool and floral perfume that rises from the floor to meet the breeze. It is a quirky historical detail of elite life. By scenting the surfaces of the room, they used sensory cues to lower the perceived temperature of the space. The floor looks as if it has been dusted with pale, fragrant snow. Your gaze travels to a small, brightly painted shrine tucked against the inner wall, where a lamp burns with a steady golden flame. Beside the shrine stand two small clay figures, Bez, the dwarf god of protection, and Taweret, the hippopotamus goddess of the household. These are the guardians of sleep, tasked with warding off the restless spirits and desert snakes that might move through the night. You watch as the mistress of the house ties a small, blue-glazed amulet to the corner of her bedpost, her fingers moving in a quiet, protective ritual. This spiritual comfort is just as essential as the linen or the fan, anchoring the mind in safety. There is a gentle, scholarly uncertainty regarding how long these servants remained at their posts throughout the night. While some researchers suggest that fans were operated in shifts to provide constant airflow until dawn, others argue that the servants retired once the household had fallen into a deep sleep, leaving the natural ventilation of the courtyard to do the rest. As you watch the servants' fan move in its steady, unbreaking rhythm, the world feels suspended in a state of permanent care. Whether for an hour or for the entire night, the presence of the servant ensures that the transition into sleep is a guided and effortless journey. You walk toward the edge of the reflecting pool, where the moonlight is captured in a perfect, unmoving circle. The servant has placed several large, fresh lotus flowers on the surface of the water, their white petals open to the stars. You notice how the scent of the flowers is stronger here, a thick and watery fragrance that cools the air simply by its association with the river. A small, green frog sits on the rim of the pool, its throat pulsing in a silent, rhythmic beat that mimics the breathing of the household. The courtyard is a masterpiece of artifice and nature, a place where every object is a tool for rest. As the lamp in the shrine is lowered, the shadows of the columns stretch long and thin across the fragrant floor. The family is now reclining on their raised cedar beds, their shapes draped in the fine, white linen that billows slightly in the fanned air. You stand at the edge of the gallery, feeling the scent of the lotus and the chill of the water jars wrapping around you. The estate is a sanctuary of refined peace, a world where the heat of Egypt has been tamed by architecture and ritual. The silence here is deeper, a quiet that is earned through the labor of the shadows and the breath of the river. The hour of the elite rest is at its peak, and the courtyard is a silver cathedral of wind and scent. You stand for a final moment, watching the servant's fan move like a steady, white wing in the darkness, before preparing to return to the wider settlement. The night is moving toward its final hour, and the sounds of the waking world are still far away. Ahead, the streets are waiting, and the final adjustments of the sleepers are being made as the lamps fade across the horizon. Stay in this state of profound calm as we move toward the final chapter of our ancient night. You leave the spacious, columned courtyard of the elite estate behind, moving back into the labyrinth of the settlement as the moon begins its slow descent toward the western horizon. The air has changed again. It is no longer the thick, stagnant heat of the early evening, but a drier, more expectant warmth that carries the first hints of the coming dawn. You walk through the narrow streets, noticing that while the world is quiet, it is not entirely asleep. The night has reached its final, most peaceful hour, a time of quiet industry and final adjustments before the sun reclaims the sky. Every shadow seems to hold a story of resilience, and every sound is a thread in the tapestry of the night. As you pass a half-open wooden door, you hear the low, rhythmic whir of a potter's wheel spinning in the darkness. You pause and look inside to see a craftsman leaning over a lump of wet Nile clay, his hands stained with gray silt as he shapes the rim of a new bowl. He works by the light of a single flickering lamp, his movements steady and purposeful. He chooses to work now, in the deepest part of the night, when the clay stays moist longer and the air doesn't bake his strength away. The soft, wet sound of the spinning earth is a peaceful melody, a heartbeat of labor that defies the lingering heat of the day. Farther down the alley, in a small open courtyard, you notice a man sitting on a low stool, his hands busy twisting thick fibers of papyrus into a long, sturdy rope. He moves with a slow, heavy-shouldered grace, the fibers scritching softly as they are pulled tight against a wooden peg. The moonlight illuminates the silver dust rising from the dry plants, creating a faint halo around his head. This is the quiet work of the night, the tasks that are too demanding for the sun but perfectly suited for the silver hours. You watch the rope grow longer, a durable lifeline for the village, crafted in the stillness of the moon's watchful gaze. You turn your gaze upward as a soft, rhythmic murmuring drifts down from a nearby rooftop. A mother has awakened to comfort her child, who has been stirred by a strange sound in the street. You watch the silhouette of her hands as she dabs a damp linen cloth across the boy's forehead, her voice a low, melodic hum that acts as a shield against the dark. She adjusts his reed mat, moving it a few inches into a deeper patch of shadow where the breeze is more persistent. The child settles quickly, his breathing becoming regular once more, anchored by the familiar texture of the linen and the scent of the river water on his skin. A shadow moves along the parapet of a higher roof, and you see the village watchman making his final rounds of the night. He carries a tall wooden staff, his eyes scanning the silhouettes of the sleeping families to ensure everyone is safe and no one has rolled too close to the edge. He moves with a silent, cat-like precision, his bare feet making no sound on the clay-plastered surface. His presence is a comfort, a human anchor in the vastness of the desert night. He pauses for a moment, looking toward the river, his linen shawl fluttering gently in the breeze. He is the guardian of the settlement's rest, the one who stays awake so others may dream. From a small enclosure near a corner house, a donkey brays softly, a low and tired sound that breaks the silence of the street. It is restless. its ears twitching at the sound of a loose clay jar tapping rhythmically against a stone wall in the wind. A woman steps out from her doorway, her linen tunic glowing in the moonlight, and walks to the animal. She places a hand on its flank, the dark fur warm beneath her palm, and speaks a few quiet words of reassurance. The donkey sighs, its head dipping as it settles back into the straw. You watch the woman return to her home, her footsteps leaving faint, rhythmic prints in the moonlit dust. Near the back entrance of a home, you see a man using a wooden shovel to clear a small drift of sand that has moved against the door during the night. The sand is soft and fine, making a dry, whispering sound as it is pushed aside. He works quickly, knowing that if the sand is left to pile up, it will trap the heat against the mudbrick and block the flow of air into the lower rooms. It is a constant battle against the desert, a rhythmic labor of maintenance that ensures the house remains a breathing sanctuary. The scent of the dry sand and the cool earth rises to meet you, a primal aroma of the land's shifting borders. It is a mainstream historical fact that ancient Egyptian labor patterns were highly adaptive to the climate, with many workers shifting their most strenuous tasks to the night or the very early morning. During the peak of the summer heat, the working day was fragmented, allowing for polyphasic sleep that prioritized rest during the sun's highest points. You can see the wisdom of this rhythm all around you. The village is not a place of stagnant sleep, but of a flexible, living balance. By working when it is cool and resting when it is hot, the people of the Nile managed to build a civilization that endured for millennia, their bodies in tune with the environment. You notice a small, painted stone tucked beneath the edge of a sleeping mat on a low platform. It is a quirky historical detail of the Egyptian night. Families often used dreamstones or small clay amulets to invite protective spirits into their rest. This stone is painted with a simple image of a blue lotus, a symbol of rebirth and the cooling water. You reach down and touch the stone, finding it smooth and unexpectedly cool. It is a tiny physical anchor for the sleeper's hope, a way to turn the act of lying down into a sacred ritual of safety. The stone holds the stillness of the night within its grain, a quiet companion for the soul's journey. There is a gentle scholarly uncertainty regarding exactly how quiet these villages were at night. While some researchers depict the ancient night as a time of absolute, eerie silence, others suggest that the high density of the homes and the presence of nighttime labor meant that the settlements were filled with a constant, low-frequency hum of activity. As you listen to the potter's wheel, the watchman's staff, and the rustle of the linen, it feels like a living silence, a quiet that is not empty, but full of the small, purposeful sounds of human life. It is a peaceful atmosphere where every noise has a place and every movement is part of a shared nightly rhythm. The lamps across the settlement are beginning to fade now, their small wicks flickering one last time before drowning in the oil. The orange glow that once dotted the streets is being replaced by the first almost imperceptible graying of the eastern sky. The moon has lost its silver brilliance, turning into a pale, translucent disk that hangs low over the desert. You feel the air grow suddenly sharper and colder, the true Nile breeze of the pre-dawn hour finally arriving to sweep away the last of the day's heat. This is the deepest part of the rest, the moment when the world is at its most refreshed and the desert is at peace. You stand at the center of the path, looking toward the river as a soft mist begins to rise from the water. The stars are disappearing one by one, swallowed by the growing light of the morning. The journey through the ancient night is nearly complete. You have felt the warmth of the mudbrick, climbed the stairs to the stars, and washed in the silver water of the basins. The people of Egypt have taught you their secrets of rest, showing you that comfort is not found in fighting the heat, but in surrendering to the rhythms of the earth and the sky. You feel a profound sense of calm, a weightless peace that settles into your bones. The first pale light is waiting beyond the desert dunes, but for now the silence of the night still holds the world. You take one last, deep breath of the cool morning air, the scent of the river and the dry stone filling your senses. The settlement is still, the families are dreaming, and the Nile flows on in its eternal rhythmic course. The story of the night has reached its end, leaving you in a state of perfect, undisturbed tranquility. You are ready to rest, your mind as clear as the sky and your heart as steady as the stones of the great temples. Sleep now, under the protection of the ancient night. Let the memory of the river breeze and the soft linen carry you into a deep and peaceful slumber. The world is quiet, the fire is out, and the day is still far away. Gently, if you found peace in this ancient journey, I invite you to join our circle of night travelers by subscribing and leaving a like for the stars. The lantern is lowered, the mudbrick is cool, the Nile whispers in the dark. Good night.